What's up, guys? Uh, this video is the first in what I hope to develop into a series called From Coach to Coach. My target audience here is other coaches. Doesn't matter what sport. I just kind of, like to talk to my peers in my profession and, express some things that, I've come to learn over the years. When people ask me as a boxing coach, which I've been doing for a little over a decade now, uh, what fighters do you study? I always tell them, like, I don't really study fighters because I don't fight anymore. And even then, studying fighters wasn't necessarily the smartest practice as a fighter because you kind of get caught up in trying to implement things that you didn't learn directly from their source. Uh, what I like to study is great coaches and great leaders. So, what I wanted to address in this opening video is something that happened to my son in a baseball game last season, which caused him to almost completely quit baseball. He had a coach who he didn't really get along with very well. They didn't see eye to eye. And after the season, he even told my wife that he didn't want to play anymore. And this kind of broke her heart because that was something that they shared because he's always with me boxing. Baseball was like the thing that she would always take him to, and he would enjoy it and she would get to watch him, which is good. Like you bond with your children through activities. Um, so she was trying to encourage him not to let one season of having a bad coach ruin his whole experience in baseball and turn him off of wanting to do it altogether. Um, Eventually, he kind of saw the light and gave it another shot. And this most recent season had a much better coach, which had much better results. But to give kind of an example of how this went wrong in one of the final games. So, despite the fact that that coach had kind of not necessarily the best practices, the team was undefeated. So I never personally, as a coach, went to him and said, "Hey, man, you need to do," because I told my wife, I was like, the likely argument is going to be, well, we're winning, so how bad am I doing, really? Um, there were reasons why I think the winning was happening. Um, that are maybe not necessarily directly attributable to the coaching, but they were winning nonetheless. So we kept trying to, tell our son, hey, there are kids out there. Like I train another kid whose dad pulled him off a team because the coach was doing so poorly that they weren't even a factor in the games that they played. But the what stood out to me was when I took him to one game myself toward the end of the season. It was a championship game. It was supposed to be the last game. If they won this game, no more games. It was cold because it was fall and Vegas gets a little bit cold, like in the fall to winter time compared to our summers. So it's cold out. The kids don't really want to be there. A few of them were even sick, I believe. And our coach, he had two kids who could pitch. One kid was a really good, very accurate pitcher who became the pitcher for the team that my son played on this season. Uh, the other kid was his son, and he could pitch when his confidence was up. When his confidence wasn't up, he would pitch it in the dirt a lot. So what ended up happening in this game was his son was pitching it in the dirt, loading the bases, and the other team scored 4 runs just on steals and walks and stuff like that. So that I consider a fault of our coach, which was the moment you realized your son was struggling in a championship game, rotate positions. that because it's gonna wreck his confidence as well. Like there was no reason for him to go through that. I mean, it was just not happening. It wasn't there, and it's okay to say when it's not there. Uh, because if you don't excuse a kid when they're struggling, you if you run the risk of leaving them in too long, and it chips away at their core confidence. It's not just, it's like, it's not there this game. It's like they're going to start to develop the idea that they can't play at all. But then the other coach did something kind of weird, which is he started coming onto the field in between every play, every pitch, and arguing and arguing and arguing. I mean, 10 minutes he's arguing. I went and got snacks, came back, and he was still arguing from the time I left, and he had just come onto the field. Because that's why I was like, well, he came onto the field. It's probably going to be a minute. Let me go get some snacks. And I came back, and this dude's still arguing. I'm like, what is he doing? They were up, 4-0, and this dude, it got to the point where even the parents were like, why do you keep coming out onto the field? What is going on? Why are you doing this? And then I realized he's delaying the game. Sure enough, the game started at 6, was supposed to end at 8. Sure enough, 8 o'clock rolls around and they have not finished the game, and he goes, oh, time's up, we gotta go, game's over, we gotta go. Now, what's significant about this is that my son's team had beat this other team like 4 times prior to this, because like there weren't that many teams in the little league, so like they knew each other. And I understand when a coach feels like, okay, I'm at the point where I'm going to get something out of this for these kids. But not like that. Even the parents on their side were complaining. Like, to me, that damages the whole sporting experience for your kids. Now, I'm not saying that like it's also healthy to like let them get smashed, every time they play this other team who's obviously better. But what good did that do? Like you essentially argued the game in favor of your team. Like that still lets them know that they didn't win on their own merit, that you basically had to kind of cheapen. And then on top of that, it forced them to play another game deeper into the winter when it's still cold out. It forced them to have to go again. So my message is, don't do that. There's as a coach, I would never argue a win for a fighter of mine unless there was some kind of egregious misgiving by a referee. And even then, there are channels with which you're supposed to take that up. Like there are methods, to dispute scores or things like that. If in boxing, if you're creating a scene, usually at a local show, you're going to get asked to leave. And that coach probably should have been ejected after like the second or third time he came out to argue. I mean, even the kids were like, what's going on? They were cold because they were just standing still while this dude's arguing. So from coach to coach, please use the proper and better channels to air your grievances, and think of, yes, you may have argued a victory for your athletes, but is that a real thing? Like, are they really going to take that to heart? What are they going to learn from that? What are they going to get from that? What, they'll argue down if they really can't keep up? To me, the time would have been much better spent developing technique and developing their ability to play. Thank you.